Welcome to the MMA Podcast, a very special edition of the MMA Podcast, as you can probably already tell, because there's no intro music. We do apologize for not doing a show last week. It's been a whirlwind. We've been on the road the last week. I've actually spent without any internet. I thought I was going to have a connection where I was going, and sure enough, I did not, out in the middle of nowhere in East Texas. But we have switched it up. We have internet now, and it's going to be a special week. It's a very special week as far as the UFC goes. We have 3 cards all starting Thursday, capping off with UFC 200, and we're going to try and do 2 podcasts this week. The one you're listening to right now will be sort of a quickie version. We're going to talk about Thursday's card, touch briefly on Friday's and Saturday's card, and then we're going to be doing another show Thursday night with Sweet Pappy Jones, hopefully with the Westland Eagle, with Ramses, breaking down UFC 200 in depth, talking about the Joanna Claudia card in depth as well. But for this quickie episode, it's me and a voice we haven't heard in a while on the podcast, the Westland Eagle. He's Alan on Twitter at Westland Eagle AH. Real quickly, what's going on, dude?
Nothing. Staring at my computer screen, looking at these matchups, kind of salivating.
It's going to be a fun-ass weekend, man. Three days where if you are an MMA fan, you probably want to ask off. Usually we start off with news, but we talked about it before the show. There was a lot of news, but nothing really to talk about, to discuss in depth. Looks like they caught the guy who's responsible for Ryan Jimmo's death, which is cool. I'm glad to see that. Rory McDonald had a kid, and it's a girl. Congrats to him. I guess, man, with that lackluster performance against Wonderboy, you gotta assume his next fight's going to be in Bellator. What else? Frank Mir, speaking of guys going to Bellator, has asked to be released. I don't know if the timing has anything to do with the Lesnar fight. Do you think maybe he wanted really bad the rubber match against Lesnar and didn't get it, and then now is asking for a release? Because the timing seems a little off. Usually when a guy asks for a release, we sort of expect it. It comes right after a fight. Frank's looked good, and all of a sudden now on the biggest week, in UFC history, probably, he's asking for a release. Do you think maybe he wanted that Brock fight and didn't get it, and now is just saying, fuck it, man, send me over to Bellator?
I think that was just kind of like the tipping point,
Yeah.
All these other things he kind of spoke on. He was talking about how they would. He had mentioned he wanted to do the announcing stuff. He had filled in, and Frank's like really good at breaking down fights. He knows what needs to be said for people to be able to to get the visual image into their head and then actually understand like the concept of what's being done. And I think it was just that and maybe some other things that we don't know about. And especially with the ban, it's unforeseen, like when he's going to fight again. Like he said, he can't announce or anything like that why he's under the USADA ban. So,
yeah.
I think it was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and he's just looking for the next fight.
Yeah, and honestly, I'm scrolling through these news stories. I still haven't had a chance to catch up. I'm going to try to later tonight, but with all the press conferences and media events and open workouts and this and that, has anything stood out? As far as anything, anyone saying anything particularly damning about the other guy? I know someone asked Brock about the steroids, and he's just like, I'm a jacked white boy, and everyone needs to deal with it. I heard about that, but like I said at the top of the show, I've been in the dark the last week. Anything cool happen in Vegas yet?
Not really that I've noticed. I've only watched the first 3 episodes of Embedded. I hadn't got to break down or listen to any of the fighter media day scrums or anything like that. Hadn't heard anything. The only cute thing I saw was whenever Brock Lesnar told Misha Tate that they could spoon because Brian Caraway couldn't do a damn thing if he wanted to.
Right? What the hell's Brian Caraway gonna do about it? Nothing. So I guess let's get to this Thursday card that we were going to break down. Honestly, the UFC is starting us off slow, and especially with the caliber of UFC 200 on Saturday, there's really no way we could expect the UFC to have a solid prelim lineup on Thursday. So we're going to go ahead and skip the prelims and get straight to the main event fights. Which starts with Joseph Duffy and Mitch Clark. Actually, a pretty interesting fight. Joseph Duffy and Mitch Clark, both pretty good on the ground. Duffy, of course, with that huge sub win over Conor McGregor back in 2010, before either man joined the UFC. Duffy joined the UFC just a little over a year ago, had two impressive first-round finishes against Jake Lindsay and Ivan George before taking a unanimous decision lost to Dustin, and I'll let you pronounce his last name because I fuck it up every single time.
Poirier.
All right, I'm Poirier. And he's facing Mitch Clark, who also is 2-1 in his last three, defeating John McGuire and Darce choking Al Iaquinta before losing to Michael Chiesa. Mitch Clark, man, I don't know what to say about his fighter activity other than it's not very good. He fought one time in 2012, one time in 2013, one time in 2014, one time in 2015, and here's his first fight of 2016 about halfway through the year. I don't know if the guy gets by paying the bills fighting once a year, but definitely an underrated fighter, especially considering his last loss coming to a top guy in Michael Chiesa. Both of these guys just lost to a top guy, but I don't know. Stylistically, I think Duffy has a big advantage here. I think it goes to a decision, and I'm taking Duffy with unanimous decision. I think Duffy has a much better chance to finish it standing up. Both dudes definitely adept on the ground. If Clark were to finish it, I would say it would for sure need to be a submission. If Duffy were to finish, though, I could see Duffy finish it standing up or on the ground. Actually, I could see him. I mean, if the fight gets stopped, period, I'm going to bet on a Duffy KO, because Duffy has for sure shown improvement standing up since joining the UFC. Like I said, knocked out Jake Lindsay in his UFC debut, and had a beautiful, like a 30-second knockout with a knee right before he went to the UFC back in Cage Warriors in London, England. So I think just because he's so much better standing up, I'm going to give it to Duffy. I think Vegas agrees with me. They've set the line minus 410, which is the biggest line as far as favorites go on the main card. What do you think of this leadoff fight?
Really, the only way I see for Mitch Clark to be able to defeat Joe Duffy is the way that Dustin Poirier was able to do it. Poirier, he was in there, they were trading, and yeah, he hurt Duffy, but Duffy also hurt him, and Dustin kind of got in his face and then initiated the takedown. And we saw that in Dustin, we don't really get to see a whole lot of his takedowns and top pressure. And I'm not too familiar with Clark. I think he reversed Al Iaquinta whenever he got that Darce choke. I don't think it was from top. And but I mean, I think that's kind of the only way that you're going to be able to beat Joe Duffy if you don't have the standing skills to match up. So I think that Mitch Clark, unless he can take Joe Duffy down and get Joe on his back, and Joe's still slick, but unless he can, grind on him like that, I don't see any way for Mitch Clark to win. So I also think that Joe Duffy is going to be able to finish it on the feet, or at least hurt him, and then, probably sink in a rear naked choke or something else.
And moving up the card, your boy, not only from the same state as you, but he's got the same damn name as you, Alan Jouban, fighting Belal, remember the name, Muhammad. 9-0, actually. This is his first fight in the UFC. His last 3 fights all over in Titan FC, won 2 decisions versus Keith Johnson and Zane Kameka before fighting Steve Carl for the championship and actually getting the championship there. TKO in the 4th round just a couple months ago, back at the end of April. Now brought into the UFC. I believe Nordine Taleb was originally supposed to face Alan Jouban, pulled out about a month ago, and was replaced by Bilal. Usually in situations like this, I mean, I've seen the guy's record. I still haven't actually viewed any of his fights, and Alan Jouban is a killer. I mean, you know, he's got a lot more wins than losses on his UFC record. He's 4-2. His last fight being a TKO victory against Brendan O'Reilly. He sort of swung and missed when he gets a big fight. You know, he got the Warley Alves fight, lost a decision, fought Albert Tumanoff the end of last year, lost via first-round TKO. I don't think Bilal Muhammad is the caliber of fight that Alan Jouban's going to lose. And usually when it's a guy I've never heard of against a guy I've seen and I've been impressed with, I lean toward the guy I've seen. And I know you're probably going to pick Alan Jouban. I almost wanted to pick Bilal Muhammad just to play devil's advocate here, but I think I'm going to pick another decision here. You know, I think that Alan definitely has the skills standing up to keep it standing up, and I mean the guy's quick as shit. If Bilal is able to take a win, I'm going to be very impressed. But I am picking the favorite here again in Alan Jouban, which is a name I can pronounce, unlike Poirier. Poirier? Did I say it right?
Yeah, Jouban and Poirier.
Yeah.
I actually watched that Bilal Muhammad fight with Steve Carl, and I wasn't overly impressed. Steve Carl just looked like dog shit that whole fight, and it didn't even look like he wanted to be there.
Yeah.
It was a terrible fight. It was Muhammad just kind of, you know, came forward and, you know, just threw punches. Didn't look like, you know, super athletic or nothing popped out at me, you know. So the only way I could see for him to beat Jouban would be with Jouban's chin not being the best. You know, he's been rocked pretty badly in a couple of his fights. It would be for Bilal to catch him and, you know, maybe KO him fast. But I think if Muhammad allows Jouban to get into a rhythm, he's probably going to end up finishing the fight. If you look at Muhammad's record, you know, all his wins basically are by decision, like 67 to 33% are TKOs. So, you know, he generally goes to a decision, so he's a tough guy. But I'm going to pick Jouban just because I don't see him getting knocked out by a guy who doesn't really knock out a lot of people. And, you know, so. And also add, Jouban, if anybody goes back and watches, Jouban beat Warley Alves. That was ridiculous. He outstruck him 2-1. Yeah. So, just going to leave it at that.
Speaking of knockouts, we're coming up on a fight, the co-main event of Thursday's card. Derek Lewis and Roy Nelson, and both of these guys can swing. I want to guarantee this is going to be a first-round knockout, but I feel like every time we expect a first-round knockout, it goes to a decision, which leads me to another point, which I make every time we preview a Roy Nelson fight, which is the fact that Roy Nelson fights only go one of two ways, with the exception of his last fight against Jared Rosholt. Either Nelson just gets pieced up for 15 minutes and loses a decision, or he scores a first-round knockout with the right overhand. I'm pretty sure that Nelson's going to score that first-round knockout against Derek Lewis. You look at Derek Lewis's record, and although it's very good, you know, the last two fights he's won in the first round. One was against Damian Grabowski, who I'm not sure if he's still in the UFC, and Gabriel Gonzaga, who I believe, didn't he retire after that fight? I don't know. Both of the guys I wouldn't put anywhere near the top of the heap at heavyweight. Nelson, yes, he did take 3 losses in a row before defeating Jared Rosholt earlier this year. But look at those 3 losses. Mark Hunt, Alistair Overeem, and Josh Barnett. Look at the 2 losses he took before that. Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic. Both of those guys currently hold UFC gold. He loses to elites and knocks out everyone else. You look at Derek Lewis's record. His wins, Victor Pesta, Juan Potts, Guto and Assange, Jack May in his first UFC fight. Jack May, who I've never heard of and doesn't have a Wikipedia. The 2 times he went up against legit talent, Matt Mitrione and Sean Jordan, both of those times he got his chin checked. Mitrione knocked him out in 41 seconds. Sean Jordan knocked him out in 48 seconds into the second round. Lewis, has shown a vulnerability in that chin, and he better keep his hands up because Roy's going to be throwing that right overhand over and over and over. And I think eventually he's going to land it. Lewis has shown to be competent, but I don't know. I don't know if his defense is going to hold up against a Roy Nelson, who is a savvy veteran and can throw and land that right uppercut overhand when you least expect it. So I don't even think this thing sees the end of the first round. I'm calling Roy Nelson first round knockout.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on how this fight's gonna go.
It's actually really even in Vegas. Vegas has it has Nelson as a slight favorite, -130. Derek Lewis +110. And really quickly, I didn't say the odds for last fight. Alan Jouban, actually a slimmer favorite than I expected, -140 to Muhammad's +120. But this one too is close in the eyes of the odds makers.
Yeah, I think because it can. They're pretty much looking at it and being like, "Hey, it can only go one or two ways. One of these guys is getting knocked out in the first round, and it's pretty much whoever lands that big overhand right first." But I think it's going to be a little more complex than that. I think that Roy Nelson is just a way more rounded fighter. If you look at Derek Lewis, even what's his name, who he beat last? God damn it! What's the guy's name? Gabriel Gonzaga. He was kind of exposed, in the wrestling. When he gets taken down, he's just not a complete fighter. He's just a brawler, and he's exciting to watch. But I think Roy is way more well-rounded, trains with better people, and as long as Roy's chin holds up, I definitely see Roy getting the victory. Either, hell, we hadn't seen a Roy Nelson submission yet. I'm going to go by Roy Nelson's second round submission.
You know what? I love that call because people always talk about Nelson's knockout ability, and people forget, and I think even Roy himself forgets during some fights. Dude is a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Renzo Gracie. That's not like a Mick Black Belt. That is one of the most proficient coaches in the world giving you a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's I would actually love to see him lock in a choke. And if Big Country does, you will be able to say you called it here on the MMA Podcast, sponsored by Ziegenbach Texas Kolsch, which is the beer I'm drinking right now here in Texas, brewed in Houston, even though I'm in Amarillo, which means yellow in Spanish. Moving on to the main event, man, I wanted this to be a quickie, and we are making excellent time, only 20 minutes into the podcast here. Eddie Alvarez and Rafael dos Anjos, and I feel like this fight has layers to it, man. You have both guys who are good grinders, good wrestlers. I keep looking for ways that Alvarez might win the fight. I feel like it's got to be by, I don't know. I just, ever since since Dos Anjos lost to Clay Guida and literally had put in a steel jaw. The guy hasn't been knocked out, and I'm confirming that right now. Yeah, he lost to Clay Guida back August 2010, nearly 6 years ago. Since then, he's only lost twice. A split decision to Gleison Tibau at UFC 139, and a unanimous decision to Khabib Nurmagomedov, who grinded him out at UFC on Fox back in 2014. I feel like Eddie's only chance is really to grind him out here. Which really quickly, before we break down the fight, do you think Rafael, I'm sorry, he is a Brazilian, so I've got to turn the R into an H. Do you think Rafael, do you think that's a unfair competitive advantage, literally having a steel jaw?
Nope. It's physiologically required. So, I mean, it's...
And it isn't about the and it's not about the hardness of the jaw. It's about whether you get that button turned off or not. And I don't think that has anything to do with what the jaw is made out of, whether it's bone or steel or anything like that.
Yeah, it just depends. I mean, who did he get knocked out by? Clay Guida?
Clay Guida back in 2010, yeah.
Yeah, I have to go back and watch that.
And 2 years before that, he got knocked out by Jeremy Stevens in 2008.
Yeah, but I mean, that Jeremy Stevens can knock out anybody. Probably could knock out some 170-pound fighters.
A lot of people thought Dos Anjos was on the sauce, maybe taking some performance enhancers before they locked down with those USADA restrictions. Do you think he's one of, and Brazil definitely picked up that rep for having a lot of fighters who were juicing on that red-hot liquid magma. Do you think Rafael... I mean, really, we've only seen him fight once since the ban was passed down. He defeated Pettis back March 2015. Then they passed the new restrictions, and he's had one fight against Cerrone, which I don't know if you necessarily can call that a Rafael Dos Anjos masterpiece. That was just more of a slow to non-start by Donald Cerrone. Just couldn't get it going, and the fight was finished. A minute in. Do you think we start to see him slow down at all?
I'm looking at pictures, man, and I mean he looks a little more ripped, maybe, but physically, he doesn't look that much bigger. It's not like there's a drastically big difference in the way that his body looked from then till now. I mean, his back isn't any more filled out. Maybe his shoulders might be a little, I don't know, more cut, and his arms. But I mean that could all come from training too. So. If you look at a lot of Brazilian fighters, take Claudia Gadelha, I mean, there's no way that she wasn't on the sauce at some point in time. I'm sorry. She's not like Tisha Torres. She's way bigger. And look at her. I mean, look at Cyborg. Look at, all these Gleison Tibau. Look at all these other people. I mean, and, steroids are legal. So, I mean, yeah, there's a chance. But, I mean, he's never tested positive. So, until somebody tests positive, I mean, you can't say that they were, and all these people saying that he was, we don't have any proof, so it doesn't matter.
The one thing that's funny about Claudia is, look, before I say anything, she is for sure a dime piece, out of my league, and I hate to talk any shit about a woman, and I'm not necessarily saying she has juiced in the past, but it's just so funny hearing her talk to Joanna, who has a very high-pitched voice. When they go back and forth, Joanna's like, I am going to beat you. And Claudia, who is shorter, I mean, this pretty Brazilian chick, and you're like, damn, this chick's hot. And then she starts talking, no, Joanna, I am going to beat you. Like, what the fuck is this? So, yeah, I don't know if she's been on the sauce or not, and I do want to touch on that card because that's a card I want to talk about. Speaking of which, who would have thought that we have this lineup of fights the Thursday fights, the Friday fights, and of course this giant UFC 200 fight from the T-Mobile Arena on Saturday. Who would have thought that the lightweight championship would be opening for the women's strawweight? It's sort of a building up of sorts, and the UFC is putting more behind Joanna and Claudia than they are behind Rafael dos Anjos and Eddie Alvarez. I mean, this is the same lightweight belt that, when Penn had the belt, that was like one of the premier belts. 205 and 155 were like the championships that they really hyped up a ton, and now the lightweight belt is just like sort of meh, Thursday card, whatever. Like, is Rafael dos Anjos really that unmarketable of a fighter? You would think, being the only current Brazilian champion, they could sell the shit out of it, but it's almost like either they haven't been able to market him or they've just chosen not to. It's shocking that the 55 championship is getting such a I've seen 100 times more people talk about a heavyweight exhibition fight between Brock Lesnar and Mark Hunt than the lightweight championship fight between Eddie Alvarez and Rafael dos Anjos. I find it kind of weird.
Yeah, and who's to know why that is, how it is, but I think, it's the same thing as why they have the women on the main event of the prelims for UFC 200. They're just trying to spotlight women's title and, just women in general to try and grow the sport. I know they're looking to add a women's 125-pound division which I think is ridiculous. But, and Joanna is a pretty big marketing success as far as like her character, personality. She just did Tough. RDA would never do Tough. Now, I think if Eddie Alvarez were to win the belt, they would try and do more with him. But, with, RDA, he's basically said, I don't do this for the money. I don't care about the money. So he doesn't do anything to try and market himself. So I think they're just taking what they've been given with these fighters and their brands and, proceeding, with whoever, they think they can get the most miles out of.
So I guess without any further ado, let's talk about this championship fight between Dos Anjos, who is looking for, I guess, a second defense of his championship, and Eddie Alvarez, who joined the UFC, I guess, back in 2014, lost to Donald Cerrone, and earned a title shot with wins against Gilbert Melendez and Tony Pettis. Simply put, I guess, does Eddie Alvarez have a chance? I'm trying to find the ways he could win, and I'm just finding it difficult. I want to root for Alvarez, being the American guy. He's got a hell of a story and seems like a great guy, a great fighter, not to take anything away from Rafael dos Anjos, but it's hard not to root for Eddie here, and I probably will be rooting for Eddie, and I want to pick him. I really do, but man, you got split decision wins against Gilbert Melendez, who I guess popped after the fight, and a split decision win against Anthony Pettis. Dos Anjos blew Pettis out of the water. Cerrone beat Alvarez, and Dos Anjos blew him out of the water. And I hate to turn to MMA math, but those are all very recent fights that have happened in the last 2 years. Both of them have fought Pettis. Both of them have fought Cerrone. Alvarez had trouble with both guys, and RDA absolutely demolished both guys. Not to mention demolishing a Nate Diaz, who just tore through the biggest sensation the UFC's ever seen in Conor McGregor. Talk about the marketability of the guy, and yeah, he doesn't talk much shit at all, and he's not exactly the most colorful fighter, but man, when that guy goes out there, he fucking bangs. He's got offensive wrestling. He is a nightmare for whoever you put across the cage from him. And as much as I want to sit here and say Alvarez gets a close but hard-fought decision, I say Rafael dos Anjos TKOs him in the third round.
Yeah, I also was, in a pretty dilemma with trying to figure out who's going to win this fight. And, my common sense just tells me RDA. The way that he's looked in each one of his fights, I could see him going out there and blitzing Eddie Alvarez. If he doesn't finish him early, I could see him hurting him early, like really bad, like 10-8 first round, and then decisioning him like he did Pettis, just beating the shit out of him for 4 rounds. I'm going to go with a unanimous decision for RDA, but at some point during the fight, I think that RDA is going to seriously hurt Eddie Alvarez. I'd like Eddie to win. He's the underground champion, underground king. It's guys like him and Frankie Edgar that, you want to see succeed. You want to see these guys who, come from nothing, not spoiled rich brats like John Jones. And you want to see these guys, rise up and cash in. And, he's got good character. He's just a guy that you can root for. And, not saying RDA isn't, because RDA is a real, humble, real, modest guy. But I think RDA is going to be able to hurt him and then, just beat the shit out of him for the next 4 rounds. So I'm going to go with RDA and a 5-round unanimous.
5-round unanimous for RDA. We're about 30 minutes in. We will wrap it up here in another 10-15, but I do want to briefly talk to you about Friday and Saturday's card. Just in case you aren't able to join us on Thursday. Actually, I'll save Saturday's card for the Thursday show. Like I said, we aren't able to do the shows live here on the road, but we will record them and put them up immediately after they're done. So we'll have this one up, obviously, tonight, and Thursday's show will be up probably a couple hours after the Thursday card wraps up. But I did briefly want to talk to you about Friday's card for a couple reasons. The first one being 2 of your favorite fighters, Joanna and Do Ho Choi, a.k.a. Do, are fighting. Is Do Ho Choi fighting Thiago Tavares? Is Thiago gonna be his first real test and make him grind and really make him prove his keep in the UFC? Or are we just gonna see a masterclass by Do and see him vault himself to the top of 45, which, man, it kills me how clogged up 45 is because of Conor. But that's a whole nother issue. First, let's talk about your boy, Doohoo.
I really don't know because I haven't seen enough of him in the grappling. And Tavares, Tavares put a hell of a fight with Brian Ortega and, was probably winning that fight going into that last round last year in New Orleans. And, Ortega was able to finish him at the end of the fight, was able to knock him out in the third round. So, he took a lot of punishment, got cut over his eye. But Tavares is tough, and he's an awesome wrestler, and he's incredibly strong at 45. So, it's definitely going to be a real test. This is going to be the very first time that Che Duho has been challenged in the UFC. But I have to pick my boy. There's no way I'm going to not pick him.
You got to pick your boy.
Especially
Sorry.
Che Duho.
You got to pick your boy, and of course, you got to pick your girl, Joanna, fighting Claudia. Now, a lot of people, myself included, the first time through, picked Claudia winning that fight. I will say I rewatched it, and that 29-28 Claudia turned into one of my many 29-29s. I think it was a really close fight. I'm going to be picking Joanna because I think she's improved more since, but I still think it's going to be a close fight. Do you think it's going to be a close fight between Joanna and Gedalia, or do you think Joanna has just turned it on, reached this crazy championship level? I mean, she's absolutely tearing apart everyone she faces. Do you think it's going to be another masterclass? You know, sort of the same question as I posed with Duhu. Is she just going to tear it up, or is it going to be another war like we saw the first time? And thank God we get 5 rounds, because that first time we needed a 5-round fight.
I definitely think it's going to go past 3 rounds. I think it's going to be another grinder unless Joanna catches her earlier in the fight. But I definitely see Claudia being able to grind and try and take her down for the first 2 rounds, and then we'll kind of see Claudia kind of slow down because she's not going to be able to keep up that pace, forcing takedowns for 5 rounds. She's just too bulky. She's just too big. And we know Joanna can do it for 5 rounds and not get tired. She just gets faster. So I think somewhere in the latter part of the 3rd or 5th round, we're going to see Joanna turn up the volume. And she's, even if she goes in there and loses the first round or 2 and gets smothered, I think she's going to come out there the latter part of the 3rd or the 4th round. She's going to start connecting, and she's just going to rapid fire. She's just going to be too quick for Claudia in those later rounds. And I think Joanna, she'll either be able to finish her, or she'll either be able to win, the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds, barring that, she lost one of the first 2 or lost the first 2 rounds. But I definitely going to pick Joanna. I don't know if she's going to be able to finish Claudia. We really hadn't seen Claudia tested on the feet the same way in which she was with Joanna. I mean, she got knocked out basically by Joanna. So, I mean, who's to say she can't do it again? So, but I'm going to go with Joanna. It's going to be a 5-round unanimous decision, but it will be a war. It will probably be the 2nd or 3rd most exciting fight on this fight card this weekend out of all 3 of the cards.
And the one thing that kind of surprised me, Korean Superboy has a pretty good line, -235, about what I'd expected against Thiago Tavares. I thought Joanna would be a much bigger favorite. She's only -130 to Gedalia's +110, which for all intents and purposes is almost even odds. Everyone I've seen pick this fight is picking Joanna, so I don't know if there's a deal in there. Maybe Vegas knows something we don't. The only other fight I wanted to talk about briefly on Friday's card was that co-main event, Will Brooks against Ross Pearson. And, it's funny. I did not realize Will Brooks was fighting on this card until, a week or 2 ago. I don't know how, but it sort of floated under my radar. The guy just joined the UFC, less than a month ago? I think June 15th. Yeah, it says May 14th he was granted release from Bellator. June 15th it was announced he was joining the UFC. That's 3 weeks ago? I don't know when exactly. I'm looking now. Apparently, the day he was announced to sign with the UFC for 6 fights, he was signed to fight Ross Pearson at the Tough 23 finale. Do you think they're throwing him in too quick? I think it's perfect. This is a guy who was relatively active at Bellator. For Bellator, who seems to struggle to have their fighters be as active as they want to be. Brooks has fought multiple times every year, and obviously has a crazy impressive record of 18-1, and that one loss against Saad Awad he avenged via a pretty one-sided unanimous decision at Bellator 105. So the guy is virtually undefeated going in. This is a winnable fight against Ross Ross Pearson. Stylistically, it matches up very well. You know, Pearson swings a lot, and even though he has power, he's got a lot of experience, leaves himself open, and I think a guy like Brooks will probably take advantage of that, even though you said something to, I think, myself and all the buddies in our fucked up group chat about him hitting pads. You had some insight there. I don't know if you want to share it or not, but what do you think of Brooks on this co-main event?
First off, I'm picking Will Brooks. I want him to win. Dude, he's just a likable guy, and
yes.
He's super talented. He hasn't fought that many times to be as good as he is and to be facing the competition.
And he's a nice guy who talks shit, which is a good combo. He's likable and he talks a lot of shit. I hate the assholes who talk shit. I hate the nice guys who refuse to talk shit. Brooks meets both sides of the coin that I enjoy. I mean, we've seen him for over a year now talking mad shit about UFC fighters, Bellator fighters, and I think he's going to have a very fun career over, I was about to say Zuffa, but I don't know if Zuffa's going to own the UFC much longer, with the UFC, we'll say.
But, yeah, definitely enjoy him. Yeah, him and Ross Pearson had a little Twitter beef going on the last couple of days, and it was kind of entertaining to see because, you know, you don't always get to see that often, so whenever you do, you got to kind of cherish it. But, no, it just looked kind of weird to me. He was hitting pads on one of the workouts, the open workouts in Vegas, and it just kind of looked off to me. Like, I don't know if it was just the person holding the mitts for him, but he just looked really, really, I don't know, stiff. Like, just didn't look like an MMA fighter or a stand-up guy. It looked like a wrestler trying to hit pads. Like, it just, you know, was kind of alarming to see that.
We've seen the UFC jitters in a lot of fighters before. You think it could be that?
It definitely could be him just being nervous, being on the big stage. Hadn't fought in a while. When was the last time he fought? I know it was like last year sometime.
His last fight was November 2016 against Marcin Held, so about, I guess, 8 months ago. It's been a little while.
Yeah.
It's been a while!
Yeah. So, but, I mean, definitely I think that Ross Pearson's going to have the edge standing up, of course, but we've seen Ross Pearson get taken down, and I definitely think that Will Brooks is talented enough to be able to do that. And, you know, if he can't get the finish, I definitely could see him riding him out. I mean, Will Brooks is one of the premier talents at American Top Team. You know, he trains with all those guys, and heard nothing but positive things about him, and we've seen nothing but positive things from him. So nothing would lead me to believe that anything other than him getting a win. You know, I think he's one of those guys, he's going to rise to the occasion. So I'm going to pick Will Brooks either by submission or by ground and pound. Don't know what around, though.
And those are two good options. I want to wrap this thing up here in a few minutes, but I'm going to throw out two random topics. The first one is a guy whose name I had to bring up. He's fighting this week, and everyone's talking about him. Brock Lesnar. Brock! Fighting Mark Hunt. First off, were you surprised when the UFC, and Pat and I talked about this, and I want to get your opinion. Were you surprised that of all the people the UFC could choose to square off against Brock Lesnar, who the one knock against him in his losses is the guy doesn't like to get hit, and the UFC matches him up with the guy who hits harder than anyone in the UFC, the guy who absolutely can swing leather, the guy who broke Stephen Struve's jaw fully. Were you surprised that they're you know, I was sort of expecting an easy gimme fight, not an easy gimme fight, but a fight that maybe, I don't know, favored Brock a little bit more than Mark the Super Samoan Hunt. I mean, it's you know, for the educated MMA fan, it's hard to pick any other result other than a Hunt KO, which, spoiler alert, is probably going to be my prediction on Thursday. Were you surprised that they give him Mark Hunt? And secondly, do you think this is going to be Brock Lesnar's final fight in the UFC?
No, I think they were just looking at getting a guy close to his age. Roy Nelson was already tied up, and there's been times in the past where like the UFC tried to get rid of Mark Hunt. They tried to pay him to leave, to retire. I don't know how the relationship is now. I mean, clearly, he's done great, so they probably don't have the same type of relationship. But I'm not really surprised that they gave him Mark Hunt. If you take away the punching power and you look at everything else actually like sides with Brock Lesnar as far as athleticism, wrestling, top pressure.
Let's not forget that Mark Hunt was subbed out by Sean McCorkle.
Yeah, I mean, and Mark Hunt, if he gets put on his back and Brock Lesnar's on top of him, he's not getting up. He does not have the jiu-jitsu to be able to. I mean, if Frank Mir can't get Brock Lesnar off of him when Brock Lesnar's on top, then do you think Mark Hunt is, with that soft midsection, do you think he's going to be able to get up from underneath Brock Lesnar? No way. So I think they're kind of, the way they're looking at it is they think that Brock Lesnar can bull rush Mark Hunt, take him down, smother him, and either ground and pound finish him or, just smash him for 3 rounds. But I'm not really surprised. I actually think that Brock Lesnar, as long as he can get Mark Hunt down, wins the fight easily. And now, if he can't take him down, and, Hunt's takedown defense has improved, but if he can't take him down, then, yeah, Brock's in for a whole world of hurt. But, who's to say, what kind of training camp Brock's had? He only had a month to prepare, and then he was in Hawaii at a WWE house show a week ago, a couple of weeks before the fight. So, it's all strange. But I think if he comes out and he wins, he's definitely going to come back and fight again. But if he comes out and it's really bad, he loses, he'll probably walk away. He'll probably hang up his gloves, and that'll be it.
Strange is a good word to use with all just everything that's surrounded this Brock stuff, from the Ariel thing to just him being at a house show and him still being an active WWE fighter. My favorite comment I've heard about the entire thing, I think I saw it on the internet. Someone left a comment saying, well, looks like Brock's got a job to 2 Samoans this summer. The joke being that he's going to lose a fight to Hunt and then lose a fight to Roman Reigns at SummerSlam in pro wrestling later on this summer. Final topic before we close it out. Alan, you have not only filled the role of co-host, but you've done an amazing job, my friend. In the last topic, Michael Bisping, Dan Henderson. This is, like I said, we didn't do a podcast last week. I spent a week in Poynter, Texas. Look it up. Poynor, Texas. Population 300. Didn't have internet service, and I barely had 3G. I mean, I would wait 5 minutes for my phone to load my Gmail. I would wait 5 minutes to load any web page. I was, for all intents and purposes, off the grid for a week. But I would still, wait and be patient. And one of the few things I would, wait on is the latest in MMA news. I got to be at least a little bit caught up. If something crazy happens, I want to know. Plus, in this ridiculous group chat we have, usually we talk about MMA a ton. And those messages were slowly but surely coming through. And I want to reference this Yahoo Sports article saying, with everyone else injured, Dan Henderson could fight Michael Bisping for the UFC middleweight title. Straight up, do you think it happens or not? I mean, this, talk about a swan song. This is a Dan Henderson who was in Pride, then and won a title, came in the UFC, wasn't able to win one, came into Strikeforce. I mean, he has won every title that the sport of MMA has to offer except the UFC's, and this could be one final chance the guy is already easily one of the top 10 greatest fighters of all time. Getting a UFC title probably moves him up into the top 5. I don't know if you put him over, the Mount Rushmore that is, John Jones, Mighty Mouse, which, yes, I put Mighty Mouse there. Even though he hasn't had the level of competition, I don't blame him, man. Mighty Mouse, I say square off Cruz and Mighty Mouse and put the winner of that fight up on the Mount Rushmore with George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, and John Jones. DC is up there, especially with all he did at heavyweight. Frankie's up there, and Dan's up there with, the guy smashed Hendo. The guy has done so much, and this would be such an awesome John Elway walk-off, win the title, and retire. As much as I have rallied for Jacare, and as much as I've said that, him getting looked over for title shot after title shot disgusts me, I would sign off on giving Hendo a title shot. Let Luke and Weidman do their own thing, get a rematch, and the winner gets another shot at the belt. I'm not sure what Weidman's recovery is looking like, and I'm sure Rockhold is going to be forced to ride the pine for at least a few months after getting knocked out cold against the Brit, which I still can't believe that happened. Even though I called it, motherfuckers, I called a first-round KO Michael Bisping. But do you think we see Hendo versus Bisping? Final topic before we close it out.
I say do it. Fuck it. I'm like an MMA purist, but do it, man. It's Hendo's last fight. He's got one more fight in him. The champion is Michael Bisping, and he wants it to happen. So, if these two guys want it, and Hendo will sign off and say, hey, if you give me this title shot, I'll retire after, because, that's what everybody wants him to do. We want this guy to retire. He doesn't have anything else to prove. Then I say give it to him. It's going to make more money than Bisping versus anybody else. It'll sell a shit ton of pay-per-views. I say fucking make Jacare fight Yoel Romero again. He might as well. I mean, it was a fucking close fight. It was basically a draw. And, the division's all tied up. Like you said, let Weidman and Rockhold fight each other again. So, yeah, do it. I'm down for it. I mean, hell, if it wasn't in England, I'd go to it. I'd pay money to go see it. And we all know how, stingy I am about the fights that I'll go to. I picked UFC 202 over UFC 200 just so I could go watch the majority of my favorite Korean fighters fight. So, yeah, I say do it. Bisping, Hendo, one more time, roll it back. Let's see if old Hendo's still got that knockout punch, and let's see if Bisping can take it, or what I think is probably going to happen is Bisping's going to KO Hendo.
You heard it here first, people. Bisping is going to KO Hendo, according to the Westland Eagle, who I believe just dropped off the call unexpectedly. But that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to, again, the Westland Eagle, Alan, for coming on, co-hosting. Thank you for listening. Like I said at the top of the show, we will be back Thursday night after the fights. Look for the podcast to drop a couple hours afterwards. I wish we could do it live and take calls, but unable to do that here on the road. Thanks for hanging in here with us, and we'll see you in a couple days. Until then, we gone.